In the year 1587, 117 English men, women, and children landed on the island off the coast of North Carolina that would come to be known as Roanoke Islands. Their plan was to establish a permanent English settlement in the New World, but because they were low on supplies, John White decided to go back to England and to get what was needed. Unfortunately, however, what should have taken only a few months would end up taking 3 years. And upon his arrival to the colony, the island was completely deserted with no signs of the colonists. Was the colony's disappearance simply the act of them relocating, or was it their disappearance the result of something far more sinister? This is the story of the lost Roanoke Colony. Before we get into today's story, my name is Jennifer and I'm a psychic intuitive and tarot reader. And if you like the work that I do here, I would ask you to check out my Patreon page. Any support would be extremely appreciative with my heartfelt thanks. I'll leave a link below. And if you're a fan of the dark and mysterious with a little tarot thrown in for good measure, then I am the girl for you. I upload 2 times a week on this channel. And if you're really a fan of tarot, you can join me on my other channel, Jennifer Walker Zen. So if that's of interest to you, I would ask you to subscribe and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of my uploads. Now let's get into today's story. Roanoke was England's first real attempts at establishing a foothold in the New World. Queen Elizabeth wanted to expand her empire, and Sir Walter Raleigh would make an important outpost. And in 1584, English ships under the command of Captain Phyllis Amadeus and Arthur Barlow set out to turn this venture into a reality. They found safe harbor along the Outer Banks, a strip of sand dunes, islands that lined what is today the Carolina coast. They named the area Virginia in honor of England's Virgin Queen. The island was flushed with wildlife and seemingly offered any potential settlers endless possibilities. However, what the English explorers did not know was that there was a group of people already occupying the area a short distance away, and in fact had lived along the Outer Banks for hundreds of years. These people were Native Americans and saw themselves as the caretakers and stewards of the land. It is alleged that the first contact between Native Americans and English was made when a lone native paddling in a canoe approached the English ship. There were awkward attempts at communication at first, but in time they developed a way of communicating. Through the trading of food and trinkets, over the next several weeks, the English began to explore the island. And for a time, it appeared to be an exciting experience for both Native Americans and English alike. To the English, the Native Americans seemed very exotic and full of wonder and curiosity, whereas Native Americans seemed fascinated by the way in which the English explorers dressed, looked, and spoke. Despite their differences, however, the Native Americans welcomed the explorers with open arms. It is reported that the Native Americans were extremely friendly and helpful to the explorers, even showing them the territory. After returning back to England, they immediately reported back to Raleigh. They defined their newfound land as the goodiest land under the cope of heaven. The explorer Arthur Barlow wrote, quote, "We were entertained with all love and kindness, and with as much bounty as they could possibly devise." Stories of the abundance of the New World raced all across England. A short time later, a major expedition was assembled. 7 ships with 600 men under the command of Sir Richard Grenville, a seasoned soldier and strict military man, was sent to the New World. Also in this expedition was a famous artist and explorer, John White, who painted images depicting the Native American people as well as the wildlife and geography of the area. Unfortunately, however, that's where the pleasantries ended, because unlike the expedition a year earlier, Sir Richard Grenville expedition turned ominous almost from the very start over a silver cup. It was reported that one of the Native Americans had simply taken it. However, it's also very plausible that there was a miscommunication. A more rational perspective was that he most likely thought it was being traded or was an exchange exchange of gifts. What's not in dispute, however, is Grenville's reaction. He decided in retaliation he would order the burning down of their village and their crops. On September 1585, after 3 months on Roanoke Island, they began to run low on supplies. Because of this, Sir Richard Grenville decided to return to England to resupply. He left 100 men in a small fort with a stockade fence erected to protect the fort. He left the men under the command of Ralph Lane. Lane's orders from Grenville was to scout the land for resources and to survive the winter. However, this proved easier said than done. The winter was unusually harsh, and the settlers ran dangerously low on supplies. Surprisingly, however, despite what had transpired between the settlers and the Native Americans, the natives were still willing to partially supply the settlers. Unfortunately, however, after a while, the Native American supplies began to dwindle as well. It is unclear when, but at some point, the king of Roanoke must have feared the starving settlers would deplete his supplies as well. So without notice, he moved his people off the island, leaving the colonists to fend for themselves. Miraculously, the settlers were able to survive, but had to resort to very extreme measures to do so, such as killing their dogs for food. Bitter and angry and looking for revenge, they tracked down the Native American tribe. They felt they had abandoned them in their darkest hour, and they beheaded their king. A short time later, Sir Francis Drake arrived to the settlement and found it on the brink of a full-blown war. Tired, starving, and disillusioned, Ralph Lane and the rest of the men decided to abandon Roanoke and head back to England with Sir Francis Drake. A week later, Sir Richard Grenville returned with a full complement of supplies. Seemingly unfazed or deterred, Grenville left 15 men behind in Roanoke with supplies and headed back to England. Undeterred by the previous difficulties with Roanoke, in 1587, Sir Walter Raleigh, under the order from Queen Elizabeth, sent ships to the America with 117 men, women, and children. The artist John White was made head of the expedition because of his previous experience in the New World. He was also made governor. He brought along with him his daughter, Eleanor, who was 6 months pregnant, and her husband. The settlers were seen as adventurers that were conquering the New World and creating order out of chaos. They were promised vast tracts of land in exchange for their willingness to colonize the far-off unknown America. And it was roundly accepted that the likelihood of them ever returning to England was unlikely. Their plan was to travel to Roanoke Island and pick up the 15 men left by Sir Richard Grenville the previous year and head north to what the Native Americans called the Chesapeake. After arriving, to their horror, they discovered the fort had been destroyed and Grenville's men simply gone. After thoroughly searching the ruins, they found a skeleton. However, they were unable to tell how long it had been there. Despite this grisly discovery, the captain of the ship refused to take the colonists any further and simply left them on Roanoke Island, essentially leaving them in the middle of a hornet's nest. The beheading of the king, done at the hands of Ralph Lane, had infuriated the Native Americans, and the English continuously attempt to place a permanent settlement had become extremely dangerous. Additionally, venturing anywhere outside of the fort for food or materials was extremely challenging and dangerous. Governor John White devised a plan. He enlisted the help of a Native American named Mateo. Mateo was one of the Native Americans who traveled back to England with the first group of settlers 2 years earlier, where he met John White. Being on friendly terms with the English, he agreed to act as an intermediary with the other tribes. A meeting was arranged for August 6th to try to make peace. Unfortunately, the day came and went with no contact. John White took the no contact as a clear indication that the Native Americans wanted war. So, not wanting to be caught off guard, they decided to strike first. He organized an attack party and attacked the first village they found. Unfortunately, he attacked the wrong tribe. He attacked the friendly natives of Croatoan. In the attack, 2 Croatoans were killed, causing many Croatoans to view the settlers as hostile and not to be trusted. It took many weeks to convince them that the attack was a mistake, made in haste due to being surrounded by hostility. A short time later, John White's daughter, Eleanor, gave birth to a baby girl named Virginia. This was the first child of English parentage to be born in the New World and was seen as a symbol of stability. A few days later, colonists elected John White to return to England to get additional supplies needed if the newfound stability was to continue. He is reported to have been reluctant to leave. However, it has been speculated that some of the settlers wanted to get rid of him for a time due to his heavy-handed approach when dealing with the Native Americans. But reluctant or not, he was clearly the person most capable of getting the supplies and returning quickly. John White set sail back to England on August 27, 1587. He made a pact with the settlers that if they had to leave before he returned, they should leave some kind of sign to indicate where they were going. He sailed into the port in England and was shocked to see that they were preparing for a massive naval war with Spain. After gathering supplies, John White begged and pleaded to be allowed to go back. However, Queen Elizabeth wanted every ship in her empire to fight the massive Spanish Armada. Even a personal request by Sir Walter Raleigh, whom the Queen had tasked with settling the New World, was not enough to make her relent. For 3 agonizing years, John White attempted to go back, but each time he failed. Eventually, after England had defeated Spain's Armada, John White was given permission to return. He arrived back at Roanoke in the summer of 1590. He led his men to the north shore of the island, calling out, hoping to find someone. When he arrived to the area where Roanoke Fort should have been found, there was nothing. All the houses had been taken down and dismantled. The land was completely bare, as if nothing was ever there. At first, things seemed somewhat hopeless as to the whereabouts of the settlement. A short time later, 2 intriguing clues were found. The word Croatoan was carved onto a post, and the letters C-R-O were carved into the bark of a tree. Croatoan was the name of Mateo's home island to the south. John White thought the cryptic communication might in fact be a good sign. The settlers agreed that if forced to leave Roanoke, they would try to give some word about where they were headed. And if they had to leave the island because they were being attacked, they were to put a cross over the name of the place to where they went. There was, however, no cross, the assumption being there was no attack and that they left the island freely. White also discovered 5 chests hidden in the woods. The chests contained books and papers, but no word on the fate of the missing colonists. White returned to his ship, planning to sail to Croatoan the following day. However, he was stopped by the captain. The captain had no concerns as to the whereabouts of the lost colonists and was more interested in plundering Spanish ships. Unfortunately, John White was at the mercy of the captain and had no choice but to go along with what the captain considered his top priority. White's hope was that after the captain's greed was satisfied, he would continue the search for the colonists. However, that was not to be. Due to the worsening weather, the decision was made to go back to England. John White would never make it back to the New World. He died 3 years later, never knowing the fate of his daughter, granddaughter, or the rest of the colonists. Theories on the fate of the colony. The first theory is a drought. A potential drought in 1998, David Stahl, a climatologist, and Dennis Blanton, archaeologist, investigated the Roanoke area, hoping to try and explain the mysteries of the lost colony. They took samples of an 800-year-old cypress tree from the Roanoke Island and examined the core of the tree rings, looking at what the potential temperatures and rainfall was. What they discovered was that the worst drought in 800 years occurred for the year of 1587 to 1589, precisely matching the 3-year time frame that John White left. David and Dennis developed a map depicting the time frame in which the colony arrived in Roanoke until the time they disappeared. What the map was able to confirm is that the drought covered all of the southeast United States, and its most extreme point was in the region of the Roanoke. The second theory is the Powhatan slaughter. A later settlement in 1607 called Jamestown in Virginia attempted to get answers regarding the lost colony of Roanoke from the local Powhatan tribe. John Smith, leader of the Jamestown colony, was shocked when he was told by the Powhatan chief himself that he ordered the slaughter of the entire Roanoke colony along with another tribe of natives called the Josephina. The reason the chief gave for the slaughter was a prophecy from his priest, the downfall of the Powhatan tribe. John Smith relayed his news back to England. King James was convinced of the claim's authenticity, and in 1610, Jamestown Secretary William Strachey, when writing about the success of the colonizing in Virginia, confirmed the Powhatan's involvement in the disappearance, allegedly explaining the reason for the slaughter. The Roanoke colonists, according to Strachey, lived peacefully among the Josephina natives on the island for 20 years, but the chief Powhatan ordered the slaughter due to the prophecy. This, however, is a contradiction, as it suggests that the massacre occurred around 1607 and the colony had already been reported missing 20 years before. Despite this inaccuracy for centuries, this explanation was accepted as the reason for the lost colony's disappearance. However, after both Smith's and Strachey's reports were re-examined along with other evidence, they are now both thought to be referring to two entirely different massacres. The third theory is the Virginese Pars map. This map was drawn up by John White when he first visited Roanoke Island in 1585. It has been kept in the British Museum in London since 1866. In 2011, a study of the map by historians revealed that two areas of this map had been patched over. This patching was done around the time the map was made. As the paper was the same type, it couldn't be removed. However, the museum was able to investigate further using a light box. By using the light box, they were able to see through beneath the patches, and under one of them lies a big symbol, a large square with long pointed corners containing a similar shape of a different color within. It's not really a symbol seen before on maps such as this, and is presumed by many to represent a fort. Many historians suggest that the Roanoke colonists may have relocated to this new location. This discovery led to new excavations of the area and further study of artifacts previously recovered from around the area. But so far, there is no evidence of the Roanoke colonists. The fourth theory is integration. One popular theory for the disappearance of the Roanoke colony states that for whatever reason, they abandoned the settlement and integrated into the local tribes, meaning they settled down and lived with them until the end of their days. There are many pieces of evidence for this. In 1607, a map drawn by one of the Jamestown settlers, Francis Nelson, reads that a group of 4 men were spotted wearing clothing that originally came from Roanoke. It is also alleged that there were supposedly 2-story houses built with stone walls in that area, and that the locals had learned how to build them from the Roanoke colonists. A century later, in 1709, John Lawson wrote in his work, New Voyage to Carolina, that tribe's people on Croatoan Islands told him of white ancestors. Confirmation of this came from the Hatteras natives, who either then lived on the Roanoke Island or frequented it. They claimed they could talk in books. Additionally, there is frequently found in this area natives with gray eyes. The assumption is that the settlement ran out of supplies and may have relocated to Croatoan Island while desperately awaiting for the supply fleet. In the late 1880s, a family of a Native American descendants in Robeson County claimed that their ancestors were members of the Roanoke Colony. Their family names were the same as those officially recorded from the 1580s, and they used words in their language that bore incredible similarity to English words from that time. Gradually, more and more tribes started to claim to have Roanoke blood in their population. In 2007, the Lost Colony Roanoke DNA Project was founded by a private company working through historical records and DNA testing. Unfortunately, however, even with the testing results, they are still inconclusive at best. Now that you know the story, let's get some answers. Join me in my investigation room. My beautiful souls, welcome to my investigation room. So I'm going to preface this on saying, of course, I always say this is for entertainment purposes only. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at a couple of different card decks. I'm going to use the Lenormand, the Kipper, the Gypsy, the Tarot, and we're going to examine some questions to try to dig deeper to find out what happened to this lost colony of Roanoke. So the first question I felt like would be the best question to ask: was there anything paranormal that happened? So my first question is, was there anything paranormal that happened with them to cause their disappearance? Okay, so what I got was really strange actually, guys. So let's talk about it. All right, so what it looks to me is, yes, there was a lot of deep, heavy soul searching going on here about this opportunity. And it looks like they did get some kind of weird message here, okay? But for them, this was interpreted for them as a miracle, okay? So they saw something that they thought was very miraculous, okay? Something that, because there was some kind of stuck energy, some stagnation here, some issues here, and they saw something that they were like, wow, this is a sign, this is a miracle. So my next question was, did they decide to leave on their own accord? So did they leave because they wanted to leave? You know, what exactly happened, you know, where they weren't there? So I found out that, yes, they decided to leave on their own accord, and it was because they were exploring something, looking into new things, exploratory energy, okay? They wanted to hold on to a sense of happiness. And yes, so we have a lot of positive cards indicating a yes. They left because they wanted to leave, and it doesn't look like they left under distress. So let's move on to our next question. My next question was, did the colony relocate to Croatoa? Now, this is pretty strange. Okay, we're going to talk about why this is pretty strange, but this is really strange. I was feeling like, okay, it was going to be real clear cut, but no, this is not a clear cut yes. Okay, I would tell you that it seemed to me like, obviously, this message was possibly done by a feminine energy to give some kind of direction. Okay, so a conversation and give direction about a feminine energy. There were some deceptions here about working or occupation and something that was lost around the situation. So, and I see the Six of Wands showing that some of them didn't make it there, okay, or did relocate there because of a feminine energy and love and devotion, or devotion here to it. But we see that there was something that happened here along the way which made them pretty stuck. But they were hopeful of taking some kind of actions here. And we see that there was a lot of cautious energy here, but they did have a victory. Some of them did have a victory here. And we see things were brought into balance, or something to do with healing and recovery around this situation. And we see that there was a lot of work or effort put into this to make the best decision on the long term. So as a clear-cut answer here, guys, we can see yes, positive. All right, let's move on to the next question. So my next question is, did the Roanoke colonists integrate with the Croatoan tribes people? And this answer is it's clear-cut in the sense that, you know, when you ask a yes/no question, you want a hard yes. This is a hard yes. Sun card came out first, so yes. Now, there's specifics to this, though. It's saying that we see there is happiness and travel and a victory here because of this will to hold on to a situation. We see, yes, there was accomplishment here because of romance. And it looks like it could have been a Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces energy, and definitely pointing to a masculine energy. I don't feel like all of them integrated, but definitely at least a few of the masculine energies possibly could have. So considering all that, I wanted to ask the final question. What was the final thing that made them leave the colony? Okay, because I wanted to find out what exactly was the scenario here. How did this happen? So let's take a look. So there was worries and concerns about them traveling. The world card can represent far away. Okay, so it looks like they lost their mode of transportation and they didn't have an ideal situation. It caused a lot of confusions and fights with the Five of Wands energy. There was this feminine energy, and it looks like there was a lot of burden and responsibility, okay? They were very overwhelmed. And so they made a sudden action there, okay? They just made an abrupt decision, okay? They wanted some kind of luck here when it came to housing, home, and they were stuck, and they really had thoughts and plans, and they were committed to leaving at that point, okay? And so there was a lot of restrictions there where they were at, and they were ready for this new place. They were concerned about some kind of loss. So they just made a sudden decision and they did it. All right, my darlings, I love you guys so much. If you guys like it this way, you want me to continue this way, hit that like button. Let me know in the comments below. I would definitely love to hear from you guys on your thoughts on this Roanoke colony. And definitely want to hear from you guys in the comments below. And I will see you guys very soon. Have a great rest of your next couple days.